Now, it's time to decide the number one midfielder, and I feel more of a debate coming on.
Yeah.
I feel there could be some disagreement here.
Yes.
Is there a case for Ruud Gullit being in this?
That's the big thing on this list.
I think
as
I
look
only
at some of
played
those
1 year.
names on there, and Ruud's at the bottom of it. What on earth are you doing on there?
Because I was awarded
year.
PV Player of the Year.
1 year you played and you got Team of the Year.
And correctly also.
Is there an argument for Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yeah, of course there is. In terms of his numbers now, he's up there with
But what about
anybody.
then?
But in the Premier League era, when he first started, he wanted a ball for himself, albeit he was, very talented, and then he developed his game. There is an argument for him, but I think there are stronger candidates in the Premier League era.
It's really hard not to be seduced by what Ronaldo became, because he's the best player the Premier League ever produced. He went on to become arguably the best player in the world, one of the two best of his generation. But the Ronaldo that we saw winning 4 Champions Leagues in 5 years with Real Madrid is not the Ronaldo that we saw in the Premier League. So whether he was the best foreign Premier League player
Would he have
ever,
been that player without his Premier League grounding?
absolutely not.
No. His name has to be down there, there's no doubt about that. An amazing player, superb at Man United, but then went on to more things at Real Madrid. So yeah, his name deserves to be on the list without a doubt.
Patrick Vieira, let's discuss
Is he a
him.
midfielder, Ruud?
For me, the best. I think his presence, because of him, I think Arsenal had a foundation that was difficult to get through. Keown behind you, Adams. That's why the rest could play, because of his presence, his vision, tackling, tough. He had everything.
I think he sort of epitomised what that Arsenal team were all about. The hunger, the desire, the ability to go out and mix it with the very, very best. Again, he was someone who, in a nice way, if there is a nice way, that was horrible to play against. And had huge respect from everyone within the game. You knew what you were going up against when you were going in against him and that Arsenal team. And if you weren't prepared to run and fight and scrap and do all the things that you need to do to win a title, to win football matches, then you might as well have given up straight away.
Quite a few Arsenal midfielders here. I mean, whether you want to give Cesc Fabregas or Emmanuel Petit or Robert Pires a shout, or is it Patrick Vieira who's stealing the limelight?
What about David Silva also?
Earlier this season, being talked about as the greatest ever. Is he the greatest ever midfielder, Rory?
What David Silva's done, as well as winning 3 Premier League titles, which is no mean feat, is he's proved something wrong about English football. When he first arrived, most Premier League midfielders were built on the Patrick Vieira model. You had to be tall, powerful, rangy and tough. David Silva is none of those things and has thrived for nearly a decade. He's lasted longer, I think, in the Premier League than all of those players apart from Fabregas, who had a little bit of a break at Barcelona, of course. He's shown incredible endurance and perseverance. He's catching up to Fabregas in the assist charts. Fabregas has created more goals than any other foreign player in the Premier League. Silva is now 6th.
Would you take him over Fabregas?
Pete Silva over Pete Fabregas? Yes.
Yes, of course.
I think so.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yes, but I wouldn't over Vieira. And if you were picking one midfielder, it would have to be Vieira, because I think he could give the team more than what David Silva can give. And that might sound strange because he's, such a talent.
Silva depends on Vieira. Because if you don't have that behind you, you can't do all these things. That's the difference. It's all about the impact on the team, because they're all great players.
There is no way that Leicester City would have won the title without N'Golo Kante, and there's no way that Chelsea would have won the title without N'Golo Kante. I don't think I've ever seen a midfielder with the energy that this guy has.
If you wanted one all-round midfielder, you'd probably take Vieira. But the other name that's worth mentioning in terms of all-round midfielders, Chris, is Yaya Toure, who had a little bit of Silva and a little bit of Vieira about him, and was also one of those pillars on which
different pace.
The Manchester City's last 10 years has been built. Toure scored the winning goal in the cup final. He was the superstar signing when they got him from Barcelona. Incredibly important, and a player who I think whose legacy is maybe overlooked a little bit, Yaya Toure.
And also, we didn't play this guy.
Ericsson?
Yeah, fantastic player as well. Also, same as Silva, attacking midfielder.
Hang on, why I, man? David Ginola.
Let's move on.
Why?
No, he's a very, very good, talented, unbelievable talent. And sometimes very frustrating talent, because he didn't always show or give the ability that he had. When you give the ball to David with his back to one of the defenders, his natural ability to go either way, left or right, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. Very good player, but I don't think you'd find many people putting him in the in
Did he get the ball
class.
in early enough for you?
No, he definitely didn't. I had one of my biggest rows that I've ever had in a dressing room with David when I first went to Newcastle because he never got the ball in early enough. So perhaps we should move on.
All's well now, though. Good
Yeah,
news
yeah,
now.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
If we had this conversation in 5 years' time, we might talk a lot more about Kevin De Bruyne.
Bit early yet.
It's maybe slightly too early when you think of Vieira as one of the kind of defining figures of the Premier League era. But De Bruyne is a player who has that same kind of drive and impetus. He'd get the ball in early enough for you, and he can take a free kick, he can shoot, he's creative, he has everything, De Bruyne, to be one of the Premier League greats. And the other name that's not here, only midfielder who's got a role named after him, Makelele. That's quite a legacy as well.
Shall we narrow it down to Silva and Vieira? Should we still have Cristiano Ronaldo in there? I mean, we're not getting very far, are we, in terms of culling this list?
Well, I've made up my mind, because of his overall presence, his overall ability box to box, what he had on that particular team, then my vote would be Patrick Vieira.
Yep, I'm with that. The only player to break my sizable nose as well, Vieira.
A lot of these players have done you personal harm.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, he was an annoying player.
I don't hold grudges.
I like the way he's voting for most of them, though, which is admirable.
I'm really disappointed I never did that when I played against you when you were centre half for Norwich.
I think you may have done. Yeah. It wasn't my nose.
You've only broken it once.
Yes, yeah, and he was the man. And I got sent off trying to top him 5 minutes later. It's a double whammy.
Revenge is a dish best served cold anyway, because you know that. But you voted for him. So, Rory?
It's really tough because they're impossible to compare. But I think if you had one player to choose, I think it would have to be Vieira.
Yes.
Clean sweep.
Sorry, David
best one.
Silva. Sorry, Eden Hazard. Sorry, Yaya Toure. OK, Patrick Vieira it is in midfield. That means we have Schmeichel, Vidic, Vieira. It's time for the strikers. So I have in front of me now some truly world-class strikers, World Cup winners. Obviously, to get into the PFA Team of the Year, you've got to be pretty good. But it's interesting, this trip down memory lane, because some of them have made an impact in a very specific one-season way. Others have had longevity, as we've seen through the other categories. I think you're going to find this tricky. Let's start with Dennis Bergkamp.
Dennis was everything you like about football, the elegance of football. He had it in him. He could do things that nobody could. We saw goals of him that nobody could. So therefore, for elegance, for sure, he is the top of everybody.
Better than Zola when you say the elegance.
Yes, I think so, yeah. Zola was also a major impact. Also for us, he was a different kind of striker. Especially with the free kicks, he could open a game and things like that. But Cantona made an unbelievable impact.
Yeah. It was just something like 1.2 million or something like that.
From Leeds.
From Leeds, yeah. It was, I mean, what a buy.
Strange thing.
And Sheffield Wednesday turned him down before
Do
he
you
went to
think they
Leeds.
regret that?
Hard to say.
If we were writing a script about Premier League history, it would be impossible not to cast him in one of the central roles.
Yes.
What he did, you know, this character that even Sir Alex Ferguson couldn't tame, which made neutrals love him.
The upturned collar,
The arrogance.
the
Wasn't it?
arrogance. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Most of these players would never have come if it wasn't for Eric Cantona. He has had more impact, more influence than anybody else. And the moment that he arrived at Leeds in 1992 was the big bang moment. For the Premier League, for English football, it all follows from Cantona.
Can't argue with any of that. And he transformed Manchester United. And again, that was at the start of the era where United went on to dictate, and he gave them that confidence and the edge. So it's very hard to argue against Eric Cantona and his whole influence.
And when you speak to some of the Manchester United players about him, he had his own set of rules from Fergie. There was rules for the rest of the squad, and there was a rule for Eric Cantona. Because of his ability, because of his impact, he could basically do what he wanted.
You see, you say all that, and then my eyes are drawn to Thierry Henry and a very different skill set to the one you just mentioned. Another Frenchman who came in as a winger.
Yeah, and then ended up as this amazingly prolific striker.
He's got all the numbers.
He has all the numbers. Henry is if you're doing it totally emotionlessly, Henry is probably the obvious choice.
But he's not the obvious choice.
Who is?
I think there's only one who stands out, is Drogba. He won the Champions League for them in the final, scored a header, and then the decisive penalty as well. That's the icing on the cake. If you win Champions League, and the influence he had on Chelsea, the power that he had on Chelsea. Same as Diego Costa. He was an annoying player to play against. He was an influence, scores goals, presence. Henry was not a number 9. He floated always to the left side, to become a winger and then score his goals from there. Van Nistelrooy is a real number 9. I don't think he ever scored a goal outside of the box, always inside the box. So therefore, he was the one who was always looking for that.
I think he wasn't as rounded as Drogba. Drogba could hold the ball in. I think Drogba had more pace. I think Drogba was stronger. But as a finisher, Van Nistelrooy, absolutely outstanding, but didn't have the attributes of Drogba.
Drogba did change the way that we think about strikers, because before then you'd have both played as part of a two, one of you more effectively than the other.
Which one?
I'll leave that open. But Drogba came in and was a one-man forward line. We now very rarely see two strikers. We see various formations with one pivotal forward. That all stems from Drogba. He was an attack all on his own. He has that legacy.
Ruud's moving Mo Salah towards me.
No, it's
there.
different. He just started. I think it was also nice to mention Jurgen, because he was playing for Inter. I played against him a lot of times, and then he came to England. He was known as a diver, and he made fun of himself. So that was, I think, was great for.
That was in the era where it seemed that we were getting players at the ends of their career, whereas obviously a lot of these players have made their name in the Premier League. Mo Salah just too soon. Maybe a few more seasons.
Yeah, I mean his numbers are incredible, goal scoring to games, but too soon.
The other one that's worth mentioning, I guess, is Suarez, who probably produced the best individual season of any player that I've seen. Dragged Liverpool to within, 4 points of the title, basically on his own, and seemed to be unplayable for that 1 year. He's not a contender for the overall crown, because it only lasted a couple of years, but for that one season, he was a pleasure to watch, if not the most likeable footballer in the world.
Yeah.
Sergio Aguero, he's got the trophies, he's got the goals.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of his. When Pep came into City, all we kept hearing and reading was that he has to change his game. He doesn't work hard enough. He's not one of Pep's players, and he's done that. So I'm right up there for having Sergio as the one.
Yeah?
Yeah. 3 titles, his goal scoring record, goals per game is as good, if not better than anyone.
Anybody want to go
We agree all to that he is a fantastic striker.
But would he be your number 1? No. Anybody else got him for number 1? No.
Close.
So I feel like we've got Aguero and Henry going on over here.
No, the thing is,
You've got
in
Drogba.
style of a player, I would go more to Henry.
Right.
But
impact.
Icing on the cake, Champions League final, scoring goals and the decisive penalty makes him the best.
And Rory?
Because the conversation wouldn't be happening without Cantona.
So we've got 4. You can't even narrow it down to 3 or 2. we're on 4. Can we discount Aguero?
Really?
I'm just asking.
That's a no then. We
can't. Okay. Anybody else?
With Rory's point with Cantona, are we talking the best player, or are we talking the player with the biggest impact?
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Alan, actually, that perhaps nobody could deny the impact Eric Cantona
had.
We
can't argue against the impact.
Who would you rather have in your team, Rory?
Who would I rather have in my
or Henry?
Who would I rather have in my historical narrative? Cantona.
But that wasn't the question.
Mine's a better question.
No, well, in your opinion. But who would you rather? If you had to pick one, who would you
purely as a
change
footballer?
Your game?
Henry
there you
was
go.
the
We
better
can
footballer.
discount Cantona.
I feel like I'm being bullied.
No.
And so we're down to Henry, Drogba and Aguero. You don't want to get rid of Drogba.
No.
Anybody have Drogba as your second choice?
Well, seeing as I've been bullied out of my first choice, do I get to
bully somebody else?
My second choice would be Drogba, and my third would be Henry.
So that means Aguero's gone then.
Well, anybody going to, besides Alan, making a case for Aguero? No, it's gone. It's a brutal game, this. So we're down to Henry and Drogba, and how do you decide between these two greats? Alan?
Henry or Drogba? Probably Henry.
I think Henry, what he has brought to the Premier League in terms of people paying money to go and watch a player, he is the one you would go and watch. and he would be my number one. I mean, he could do everything.
It's really hard, but Henry took the breath away more.
Sorry.
Champions League is the most important thing. But not here.
Well, that was a bit tortuous, wasn't it? But we got there. Thierry Henry is the top striker. The time has come to reveal your best ever overseas Premier League player. Now, this might not be one of the players you've picked in the preceding categories if you feel strongly about a player who got left out. You've been writing down your name, so without further ado, Alan Shearer, reveal.
Well, it'll be no big surprise that I'm not naming a goalkeeper, a defender or a midfielder. In terms of biggest impact and best player, I think they're slightly different. If it was the biggest impact, then it would have been Cantona, but I believe the best player is Sergio Aguero, because of his goals, because of his style of play, because of the titles that he's won.
Yeah, it's a good case Alan put forward there, but he was wrong. I think the greatest player has to be Henry.
Reveal him.
There we are, Thierry Henry.
Nearly didn't even make it as top striker, did he?
Well, which was incredible in itself. But in terms of what couldn't he do, what didn't he have? You know, someone who would get the crowd off the seat. Just a phenomenal Premier League player, and he is the best.
We don't need to go any further.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we all know what's on your whiteboard, but just reveal it, Rory, anyway.
Desperately predictably, Eric Cantona.
Obviously.
Because although Alan and Chris and Ruud will make perfectly compelling cases for people who are probably better footballers, none of them would have come to this country without Eric Cantona. So purely in terms of impact, there is English football before Cantona and there is English football after him, so it has to be him.
Okay.
But he's not the best footballer.
Let's have a look, Ruud. Who have you gone
I
for?
think that I'm also going for a striker. He's not my best striker, but I think he was, for me, the most elegant player. And I think a player that everybody wants to go to the stadium for. And it's Thierry Henry.
Oh, which, if we're doing this democratically, means that at 50% of the vote.
You just argued Didier Drogba's case for 10 minutes to say he was the best player.
But now we are choosing also as a player overall. I think that Henry was a player I would love to see.
Somehow, 3 days after we started, we got there. Guys, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful actually having a little trip down memory lane and hearing what excites you all. And clearly, Eric Cantona excites Rory a lot. But ultimately, on this table, it's Thierry Henry. No doubt this debate will go on and on.